Hello, Toman here. Welcome to my HDR tutorial part 2. Today I will talk a bit about Photomatix Pro, which is tool I will be using for my HDR processing. Know that there are other tools, but I exclusively use Photomatix Pro and Photoshop to do some adjustments. Okay, so without further ado, you can get Photomatix Pro by going to hdrsoft.com website and going to download, where you can download Photomatix Pro for Windows or Mac. Photomatix offers a free trial, which doesn't expire after 30 days, but the only thing is that it adds watermark onto your photos. Okay, I'm going back to the main site. In fact, I will be using beta of the newest version, which is 5.0, which you can also download from Photomatix Pro page. I will install version for 64 bits for Windows, as I'm using Windows 7. Now downloading takes some time, but not much as the file isn't huge. Okay, and here is the install. The installer is very simple. You just click next, basically. You can specify path where you want the Photomatix to be installed. Now, if you have Adobe Lightroom installed, you might consider installing Export plugin for Photomatix. This way, your workflow will become much easier. You will be able to export files directly from Photomatix and to re-import them once you're done processing them. So, as I'm using Lightroom quite a lot, I will install the plugin. Okay, now installation takes seconds, and finally Photomatix is installed, so I'll launch it. Okay. Interface is quite simple. On the left side, you have a window with the most common functions, like loading bracketed photos, opening single files, tone mapping, batching, and tutorial. You can open either bracketed sets in Photomatix, that is several exposures representing the same scene, or just a single photo, and you can also process it. I will for now load some bracketed photos. I will go to my desktop. I prepared some files to show you. Okay, I select 3 files. I will now check this box to show you something. Now, here you have a pre-processing options dialog, which basically allows you to control how your HDR image is created. If you think that your images might be misaligned, that is, there could be some movement of camera between the shots, make sure to check this box. Normally, if you took your images with tripod, you should check this. Sometimes, however, in my case, movement was much bigger than I would expect, even using tripod. So it's not always the best option. It was due to the wind mainly. The other option is when you took your photos handheld. However, this can be used for photos taken from a tripod as well. Basically, it's more robust and also a bit more computationally expensive, thus it takes a bit more time. However, I use this option most of the time as it aligns images in even very difficult situations. Next option is to remove ghost. For now I don't check it because in this photo I don't have ghosts, so I will talk about it in a few minutes. Next checkbox is about reducing noise. You have several options here. You can reduce noise only on your underexposed images, normal exposures and underexposed ones, or all source images. I often check underexposed images only if I shot my photos with ISO 100. If I took photos with higher ISO and I expect that there might be some noise, I most frequently check this option, all source images. Finally, there is reduce chromatic aberrations, which I also check to remove any color fringing. You can also specify white balance, and the options here are pretty standard: auto, daylight, cloudy, shade, tungsten, and so on. I will leave as shot for now. And you can also specify color space, sRGB, Adobe RGB, and ProPhoto. Okay, in this case I used sRGB, so I will use it as it is. Finally, you have to click Preprocess. Now, what Photomatix is doing now is it creates your HDR image. It reduces noise, it aligns images, removes ghosts, and so on. It takes a few seconds, and then you will be shown your very true HDR image in just a few seconds from now. Reducing chromatic aberrations basically takes most of the time. It's the most cost and expensive process. Okay, now this is what HDR image is. It doesn't look very well. Many people confuses HDR and tone map image, and now you see pure HDR image. It cannot be displayed properly on your monitor, so there is very huge contrast. Some trees appear to be very dark, like here and here, and the sky seems to be blown out. However, it's not really true, and I will show you. You can go to View menu, and you can adjust HDR image view by increasing or decreasing exposure. You can use F12 and F11. Now, I will darken the image a little bit by clicking F11 a few times, and as you can see, well, the clouds aren't really blown out. All details are there. The same stays true if I will brighten it by pressing F12 a few times. The shadows are not so dark as they appeared at first, okay? Now, as this image cannot be displayed properly on current generation of monitors, we need to tone map it to make it possible to display it on our monitors. So we need to click this button. You can also use Ctrl T if you're on PC. Okay, it's how tone mapped image looks. Now I will talk a bit about interface. Photomatix for a few seconds. This window here is the window where you make adjustments to your image. There is a lot of sliders, as you can see. But first, there is a process. You can use tone mapping or exposure fusion. Tone mapping uses HDR image, exposure fusion uses source, bracketed photos, and blends them. It's quite similar to manual blending if you're familiar with it. If not, it's about taking photos and blending it with like layers, changing opacity, averaging them, and so on. But it basically uses only source images. Okay. Below process, we have method. For each process, there are several methods. For tone mapping, we have three: details enhancer, contrast optimizer, and tone compressor. Details enhancer is the most popular Photomatix Pro tone mapper, used for years and being there for quite a while. It has this very Photomatix look, but it also can be used to create very realistic images if you use it right. Contrast optimizer, added in beta of Photomatix Pro 5, is a tone mapper that can be used to create very realistic looking images. Tone compressor is global tone mapper. Without going into details now, global tone mapper processes the image globally. It applies the same adjustments to all pixels, unlike the other two, which work more locally, taking into consideration neighboring pixels. Exposure fusion has a few more methods. Today I won't deal with fusion much. I will in the future parts of this tutorial. So I will switch back to tone mapping. Also, there are presets for each of the processes. You can select balanced, for instance, creative, or grunge. There are a lot of them. These ones are built-in, and these ones are custom presets. Basically, these are my files that you can download from my website. Okay. This window here is preview. Here you will see any changes you make to your image, and also you can zoom in by clicking on this fairy icon, or zoom out. You can also quickly increase scaling. It's fast method, but as you can see, it's not as accurate magnification as using the icons. Okay. This window here is presets window. You can select the same presets as the ones here, but also a few more. You can go through the presets using a keyboard, for instance, or by clicking on the presets that are interesting to you. There are a lot of them, and you will definitely find something interesting for you. And presets are a great starting point. By starting from them, you can create your very own style. Okay. Also, there are preset categories, which basically limits the list to just a few presets. Shortlist are the most popular presets, let's say. Realistic are the presets used to create realistic looking images. Artistic are used to create artistic looking images or grungy ones, painterly or vibrant. Black and white images are used to create monochromatic images. Monochrome 1, black and white artistic, for instance. And finally, there is fusion category, which contains only presets used by exposure fusion. I'll switch back to tone mapping. Okay. Also, there are two icons here. You can use them, the first one, to increase size of your presets to nice. Okay. Now it makes it easier to choose the preset that appears interesting to you, because the images are much larger. The second icon is about switching between one column view and two columns view. In fact, by default, Photomatix uses one column view. I toggled it to use two. You can switch to one column and then to two columns. Okay. At the bottom of this window, you also see that there are two tabs built in, which contains all the presets that comes with Photomatix Pro and My Presets. This list contains all your custom presets or ones that you downloaded. To download presets, you just need to go to some website, download them, and then you can import them by clicking here. In this category menu for custom presets, there is import presets menu, and you can import your presets by using it. Okay, when you're done with processing your image, you just need to apply and finish by clicking on this very button. Now, Photomatix processes your file. It takes a few seconds again, and then your image appears on the screen. Now, it's tone-mapped image. It's not HDR image anymore, it's slow dynamic range image, in fact. What you can see here is another window. It's called Finishing Touch window. It's a set of tools that let you increase contrast, color saturation, and sharpening. It's a great tool if you don't have access to Lightroom, for instance. You can increase contrast by choosing preset, or by adjusting the sliders here, as you can see, the curve changes. Same for color, you just need to go to the color tab and increase or decrease saturation by dragging the slider. Okay. Also sharpening, you can just press it or adjust the sliders. Now, when you're done with your finishing touch, you just need to click on Done button, and then you need to save your image using Save Final Image. You can choose TIFF 16 bits, 8 bits, or JPG images. Okay. And after a few seconds, the image is saved. Now, okay, I talked about the ghosting. I mentioned it. Now I will show you what it's about. I will load some bracketed photos again. This time from set 2. I will also make sure that this box is now unchecked. I showed you HDR image before, so to save time I won't do this again. Also this time I check Remove Ghosts checkbox and uncheck Reduce Noise and Reduce Chromatic Aberrations to save some time. Note that normally I will check this, but I don't want to waste your time. I click on the Preprocess button again, and now processing is in progress. Alignment, okay, and here is the image. Now, the ghosting is about subjects that moved between your bracketed photos. Basically, when you take several exposures, it takes a fraction of a second, sometimes second or two, but the problem is that it's not happening at the same time. You take 3 photos and they aren't taken at the same time, they are taken one by one by one. So some subjects tend to move between the frames, and it happens quite a lot with subjects like clouds, grass blades when there is wind, or people, cars. Now, in this photo, that's what happened to me. There were quite a lot of people in the frame, and some of them were walking as I was capturing the photos. And they appear as ugly ghosts. You can see that the man here is semi-transparent here, but here he is completely opaque. And the ghosting is about getting rid of these artifacts. Okay, in Photomatix Pro, you have 2 tools to deal with that. There's Selective Deghosting tool, which allows you to drag a region around a subject that has moved between the frames. Once you drag the region, and with quick selection mode, you can choose exposure to use for your photo by right-clicking on it. You can also remove selection if you're not happy with it. Then you can drag another one. Okay. Now, if you're happy with your selection, you can preview your deghosting. Okay, and the man doesn't appear to be ghosted anymore. Great. Okay, I will remove selection for now. But there is another tool, Automatic Deghosting. In this tool, you can select base photo that will be used for deghosting. Here are your 3 exposures, and you can specify amount of deghosting. As you drag the slider, the artifacts disappear. In this case, the ghosting needs to be quite strong because the artifacts are strong. Okay. Note that for high amounts of the ghosting, the possibility of some artifacts to appear becomes higher. In fact, at one side, it tends to remove ghosts better, but there is also a chance that it will introduce some artifacts on its own. So if the quality is important to you and you can deghost easily with selective deghosting tool, then it's the better way to go. Okay. But in fact, automatic deghosting tool I use quite a lot, and most of the time it works pretty well. And when you're happy with your deghosting, just click on your OK button. Now, processing is in progress again. And now, here is your preview. Okay. Okay. The image looks pretty well, I think. There aren't any artifacts. You can use loop to see if there are any ghosting artifacts by clicking on the image. You see this dotted rectangle. Okay? And there are no ghosts. The man appears to be very sharp and crisp. There is some noise, but please remember that I didn't use denoising, and this image was shot with some high ISO, because it was taken handheld. Okay, so I will close this image. I also mentioned that if you have Lightroom installed, then you will be able to make your workflow easier. So now I will go back to Lightroom, switch to Lightroom. Okay, I have some images here, 3 of them. Okay, that were developed using standard Lightroom settings. So I set white balance, corrected distortion. Now, with these 3 images selected, what I have to do is to right-click on any of them, select Export, and now, if you install the plugin, there is a new option, which is Photomatix Pro. A dialog will appear, which looks quite similar to the pre-processing dialog that I showed you earlier. And in fact, it's very similar. Now, you can automatically re-import into Lightroom library when you're done with processing your image. It's very useful, because after processing is done in Photomatix, the image will appear in your Lightroom catalog. Okay, you can also specify output format. For now, I won't change any other settings. Let's export it. Okay, now, as you can see, Lightroom exports the images. Okay, exporting 3 photos to Photomatix Pro. And now, they appear in Photomatix. They are processed as usually. There is no pre-processing options dialog. It was already in Lightroom. Okay, and it's typical Photomatix preview. If you're happy with your settings, click on Save and Re-import. Please note that previously it was named a bit differently, but now when you're using Lightroom plugin, the name is different of this button. Click on it. Tone mapping with contrast optimizer is in progress, and the image appears in Lightroom catalog. So this way you can really simplify your workflow. I'm using Lightroom quite a lot. I make some preliminary adjustments in Lightroom, then go to Photomatix, then apply some further tweaks in Lightroom, and then go to Photoshop to apply even more adjustments. This way I don't need to drag files, load them in Photomatix directly. I can simply export them, and it saves me a few precious seconds. Now, thanks for watching this part of my HDR tutorial. In future parts of the HDR tutorial, we'll focus more on the sliders, more on the settings. I will show you how to create realistic looking HDR images, and we'll show you also some tricks, and we'll give you some tips on using Photomatix and on HDR photography. Thanks for watching, and until next time.